The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. Doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. A VIU and CHLY alumni was back in Nanaimo Thursday for the launch of a graphic novel telling stories from his home nation of Homalco. Tchadas Leo is a journalist with CHEK News, and for the last number of years he's been leading the work on Xwemalhkwu Hero Stories, which tells a trio of tales inspired by Homalco elders. The Homalco Nation's band office is in Campbell River. The nation's traditional territory stretches across the Butte Inlet. Ayajutham is the language of the Homalco people. Prior to the launch event Thursday, Tchadas Leo paid a visit to the CHLY studio to speak about the project.
My name's Tchadas Leo. I am a reporter from CHEK News as my main job, a TV reporter for the past 2.5 years. I'm also the TV host and producer of the TV show podcast Our Native Land for about 5 years through CHEK Media, and those are my two main roles that I do. I'm Indigenous from the Homalco First Nation, as well Indigenous from the Still-Wamish tribe of Indians from my father's side, and I'm also South American, both from Peru and Argentina from my mother's side. And I'm, like I said, a journalist. I also do some acting on the side, voice work, and coincidentally, a bit of graphic novel, management and editing, which I have a hint that that's what we're going to talk about today.
That is, in fact, what we're going to talk about today. You're back at your old stomping grounds in Nanaimo, Vancouver Island University, for a launch event. Can you tell me what's the origin story of this project?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back, if we were really to go back, it goes back to the late 90s and early 2000s when there was a grant in place through the Homalco First Nation to start recording elders and gathering that information, preserving that information. Not every nation really thought out to do that back in the day, but we were lucky enough that we had a team that did that, which also included my mother, actually. We went and recorded elders. At the time I was 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. I didn't know the importance of it. And, I had other things to do. But fast forward to about 3 years ago, and there was Education Without Borders, which is a nonprofit organization that helps, youth in South Africa as well as Indigenous youth in Canada, had reached out to the nation through the radio station that we have. And from there, they got a hold of me and said, we have these recordings. What if we grab these recordings and turn it into a podcast? So from there, I was like, okay, I thought it was easy enough, but there's hours and hours and hours of these elders talking, such great treasures. So between myself and my assistant, Alicia, at the time, we went through hours of these recordings, found these themes, these climatic moments, and then we sat around a table with like an elder or youth or the chief, and we'd go through these 12 episodes talking about these recordings and what they meant, clarifying them too, because we didn't have the good sound recording system we have now. And then fast forward to getting the podcast produced, thought things were done, we were going to move on, and then Education Without Borders again said, we got a little bit more money. What if we turn this into a graphic novel? And that really aroused my curiosity. And I said, you know what? I think I can do it if I have the right people to help me. So we got some help from UBC Comic Studies clusters and a bunch of other departments from UBC, and Biz, who is a professor who specializes in comic books and graphic novels. And with her help and my wife's help and 3 Indigenous artists and obviously a bunch of other people that I'm not going to list off because we don't have the time, we were able to make this graphic novel. And that kind of leads us to a lot of these book launches that I've been doing across the island in Vancouver and VIU, like you just mentioned.
What's the role of language in this project?
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. And we're still making corrections on it because we're always finding corrections on the language and how to improve it. But the language part is to really engage the youth, to really, find a different medium where they're going to find it exciting and interesting to actually read a comic book, especially because comic books have heroes in it a lot of the time, which is why we labeled it Homalco Hero Stories, because we really feel that the elders and their language is so vital, and they were able to be resilient and hold on to what they did. So that language is built into the text in a way that even if yourself, who's not from Homalco, can read it, you can probably figure out what that word means. without actually pronouncing it. And then to pronounce it, you can look at that word and then go to the back of the book and there's a glossary. So then that glossary will show you how to pronounce it phonetically, and get you the best version of it. Obviously, it's so hard on paper. There's so many, ways to pronounce a certain word. And it's so like we say Homalco, but the actual Jutham way is Homalco, which is how are we going to write that on paper, right? So there's also a QR code that you can scan and go to the First Peoples Language website and actually hear an elder's recording of that word, which is super helpful. So language is vital and in that role of the book, and hopefully the youth are really engaging with it.
And it's my understanding that in very recent years, like the last 1, 2, 3 years, there have been a lot more revitalization efforts for Ayajutham, the language of the Homalco. What was it like doing this work on the graphic novel alongside that? Were you able to interact with that at all?
Of course, yeah. It was really unique because for the first year and a half or so, we didn't actually, there's very few people in the nation that knew what we were doing, because I don't live on reserve. So I was just doing this remotely with a lot of the team in Vancouver and whatnot. So being able to come to the nation while they were already doing stuff and just adding to it was like, the cherry on top, right? The icing on the cake. So it was really cool that there was enough resources in place where I could just come in with the team and just add to what they're already doing. I mean, there's the canoe journeys they're working on. There's the actual online Zoom classes they're working on where anybody can jump in and learn the language. And there's elders that are always available to try and teach the language. And there's a few younger folks that are really making an effort. So it was just such a gift. I'm an urban Indigenous male. So when I left the nation back in 2009, I really haven't been overly connected to my community. But since becoming, a podcaster, TV host, and then journalist, and then subsequently this managing editor for this book, it's really connected me back to my language, my culture, and especially my family. So just being able to walk in the same line as them and not actually live there is a really, really cool thing.
And from what I've read, the goal, while this was still in the works, while this was being written, was that you would go and you would have a hard copy of this finished book and you would take it to the Homalco Nation and you would sort of give it to the nation and say, this is yours. What do you want to do with it? I understand that's now happened. Can you tell me what that was like?
Yeah. Wow. That was an incredible day where they had a language day kind of set up to invite people in to spend the first half of the day with me and getting that physical copy. So it was a really beautiful moment to have a lot of my relatives and my family there to show them, what we've been working on. We had a halfway point meeting to show them, but to finally have that end product in their hands was a really beautiful moment. We had, all 2 out of the 3 artists come from the mainland. We had Biz from UBC come. We had the founders from Education Without Borders. We had the nation and among other people to really come together and show this is what we've been working on. And the reaction was really incredible, really heartwarming. And I'm tearing up a bit because I remember the end of it and I just was trying to wrap up my portion of the presentation. I just started crying because it was just such a beautiful moment to finally get to the end point to actually give it. And the nation is now, taking that book and making a small profit off of it to go back into the community for those language programs. I don't make a penny off of it anymore. It is every single dollar goes back to the nation, back to the language and culture program. That was the goal right from the beginning. Like you said, grab that book, bring it. This is yours. Do what you want with it.
What's your understanding of the future of the book? So, you're here in Nanaimo to do a launch event at VIU. You've been going around to a number of communities doing similar events. For people out there in the community listening, what's the route to get their hands on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're constantly evolving on how we're going to do this. I think this will be my last public book launch for a while, unless we're asked to come elsewhere. Obviously, I do a lot of other jobs, but so I'm really looking forward to the VIU book book launch. But moving forward, we're still talking and in communications with UBC and Educate Without Borders. We know that there's more that this book can do. I can't really divulge too much information right now because it's all pending based on grant funding and whatnot, but we are trying to expand the potential of this book to maybe get into the more school systems, not only on Vancouver Island, but possibly on the mainland. So that's something that we're trying. I think even before the first book was done, I was having the chief and other people talk about like, well, it's so great. We're going to have to do a second one. So there's so many more recordings that we could go through. Like I said, there's hours, probably 48, 56, 60 hours of recordings. Like the possibility to grow this and create a little series out of it is there. How we do it needs to be done properly and in the right way, like a lot of things we do. So the potential's there of more books, and expanding the way that the educational system can get a hold of it might expand. But again, that's to be determined.
You mentioned there important to do it properly in the right way. What was that process like for this first book?
That's a great question. And you know what? I'm really happy you asked me that. And out of all the interviews I've done for this, nobody's really asked why that's important and how we've done it. So I appreciate it. The right way is spending time with elders in a way that's not rushed and is meaningful, and you take your time. So, I spent quite a lot of days and nights driving to Campbell River, spending the day there, and then spending the night, waking up the next day, doing it again, and just really going through page by page of what each word means. Is it spelled the right way? Especially because these artists too, as much as they've encapsulated our stories, they're not from here. They don't know our language. So, just going through stage by stage and then coming again and correcting again, and then coming again and correcting it again. And just, there's deadlines obviously, but if we went past the deadline, that's okay because we want it done right and the right way. And like I said, we're still making minor corrections to the book, and there might be one or two more after that because that's, our language is here and we're taking care of it. But, there's different ways of saying things, and then there might be a better way to spell it that we've learned how to spell it down the road. And that's just part of the challenge because at one point we didn't have a way of writing our language. So we would just speak it, right? So just finding ways of writing it properly is going to be that continual challenge, but that's the right way. Taking our time, making sure it's accurate, not overly rushing things, and making sure that the elders and the knowledge keepers feel like this is a proper representation of our language and who we are.
We've talked a lot so far about the story behind the book. I'm wondering if you could tell me anything, a little tidbit here or there about the stories within the book.
Yeah. There's three stories. The first one is the clam digging story, and it follows a young girl and her parents or her grandparents take her out in a canoe. And a lot of it is at night because it would talk about the tides, and sometimes the tides are best at night. So imagining with no technology, maybe a lamp or a flashlight later on, and having to go to these beaches and harvesting these clams at night. And that's a really cool story. And then during the day, how to process it and how to eat it is also a cool aspect of that book. Or of that story, rather. So that's the first one. The second one, I'm going to be a bit impartial. That's my favorite because it's a story. It's based off of my dad and how he used to river bathe. And river bathing for us was part of like when you started to hit puberty. It was how you became a man or a woman, is to go bathe in the ice cold river or the Homalco River or the Butte Inlet. And when I tell you it's cold, it's so cold. I remember putting my hand in the summertime and it was freezing. Anyway, so he used to go river bathing, and what happened is he would just start wetting his hair and going back home and just saying he was river bathing. But obviously his grandmother would not realize because there's a rope that you're supposed to use to go in so you don't, get washed away, and the rope was dry. So she would have to go down and she made a new rope and put it on, and she'd go check the rope and make sure he actually went in because he was just kind of cheating his way through. So that was a cool story that's also very represented with a lot of elders before him that used to do river bathing. That one's a bit more humorous and less about history, but very cool nonetheless. And then the third one is food, hunting, and preservation. So that really boils down what we used to hunt, where we used to hunt it, how we used to hunt it, and then how we used to preserve it before contact and after contact. That one's jam-packed with information there as well. I'd say that one's the most educationally written story, whereas the other two are more of story arcs. But all three of them are phenomenal and really represent those recordings and our language and what we used to do and what we can continue to do today.
There must have been an incredible sense of responsibility that you felt managing this project, and I'm wondering how that was for you and how you feel like it turned out and how you're doing now with it all.
Yeah, it was overwhelming in a good way. When I was first approached by it, I was like, I'm just a journalist. I know I'm from there, but I'm just a journalist, a podcaster. So the podcast version of it was so easy to say yes to. It became more difficult when it's like, we want you to manage this entire graphic novel and make it happen. And that was intimidating. It was stressful at times, but it came with a lot of joy and satisfaction. And yeah, it was managing it all while still doing a full-time job at CHEK, while still, taking on the odd acting gig and doing all these speeches and other things that I love to do. But the reception at the end when I handed the book over made it all worth it. It was kind of the report card at the end, because sometimes it's a lonely portion of the job. It's just a lot of emails and Zoom calls, right? So the end really showed me that it was worth it, and that I'm willing to continue down this road and help the nation preserve it in other ways, depending how some of these grants and other projects come along.
What do you hope is the impact?
Yeah, I hope the impact is that this book will continue to go in the school systems, reach more school districts, that we're able to maybe do some sort of online version where there's like teachers from across the province can have access to this graphic novel, or at least portions of it, to like bring it in the classroom. Because I think it's important that, the younger generation understands the culture that used to be here and that still is here and that's still thriving, and just show that sense of resilience that a lot of these nations are able to show despite colonialism, despite residential school and everything else that was on the path of trying to stop from moments like this happening, where you could pick up a book with your language and read it. So I hope it continues to hit the youth, and there's still a lot of adults that I really, really love it too. So the more people we engage and educate, the happier I think the nation myself is going to be.
Is there anything else you think it's important to bring to the conversation today?
Yeah, it's always a great question. I asked that question too. Good job. I really think for people that are probably listening, like, how do I get the graphic novel? It's been a real challenge. When we first released it, Canada Post was on strike, so we didn't really set up a mailing system. So the best thing is to just contact the nation, and you can leave your name and phone number or an email if you want to get on a wait list. You can also follow me on Instagram, because if I do another book launch, or I have to be somewhere, obviously I bring the books with me. So that's Tchadas_Leo. Those are the best ways to get a hold of us and find out where they are. They're in a couple. Camp River Museum is a good one, but we're working on that distribution. But the priorities right now for the nation, I think, is making sure all members have it, that we work with our sister nations, and that the school system has a priority to get that in the school system. But reach out if you're curious about it, for sure.
Well, Tchadas Leo, congratulations, and thank you very much for coming down to the studio.
Great to be here. Thank you, Joe.
CHEK News journalist and CHLY alumni Tchadas Leo speaking about Homalhkwu Hero Stories. It's a graphic novel project he led that tells stories inspired by elders from the Homalco First Nation.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada and generous listeners like you. With your support, we can expand Midcoast Morning from 2 to 3 original programs per week to cover local news, current affairs, and arts and culture.
Thursday in Nanaimo, there was a launch event at VIU for Homalhkwu Hero Stories. It's a graphic novel inspired by stories from Homalco First Nation elders. I spoke with one of the artists who worked on the project.
My name is Valen Onstein. I'm 30 years old this month, and I initially come from the Horse Lake First Nations in Alberta, but I've been living in BC almost my entire life, and I've been a professional artist for about the last 5 years.
Well, happy birthday month. Thank you very much for making the time to speak with me. It's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about how you came on board with Homalhkwu Hero Stories?
So I actually was initially approached by email and asked to apply, which was pretty cool. I've never had that kind of thing happen with me before, but I mean, again, over the last couple of years, my like public image as an artist has become like a little bit bigger, a little bit more known. So it was like pretty cool when that happened. And like after applying, I came on board with the other two artists, and I don't know how much else to say other than that. Like it was just kind of like submitting the, the boring like emails and portfolio, and then waiting for the approval process. But once everything was together, like that's when kind of the more exciting things happened.
So you go through all the work of, submitting your portfolio, having all the Zoom meetings or whatever. And then when it comes time to get down to work, you get maybe the brief for this story. How do you approach turning it into art and putting it on the page?
So the stories initially came from sections of like stories told by elders about their life, like either I think, well, they were telling like some kind of pre-contact stories, and then others that were just like slightly post-contact, like as they were like coming into more like modernized life, right? Like colonial lifestyles, I should say. And they were like sections of stories talking about how they'd lived their like traditional life. And so from those sections of audio from the podcast, I took notes based on the stories that were assigned to me, which were about like traditional clamming in the area, because they're coastal people, they've got a lot of access to clams, and they even like made their own clam gardens from scratch that are thousands of years old. And canoeing, of course, is another like huge aspect of coastal life. So those were the two like major story aspects that I was assigned, and from there I just made a fictional little story about a young child going clamming at night with his family for the first time.
How do you approach doing that kind of work as someone who's not a member of the Homalco Nation?
So, I mean, like, as I've been saying in other kind of like public book launches and like interviews and things, like I haven't been able to be on my traditional lands. And so the opportunity to be out in the Homalco Nation, I was just kind of like, I was excited on a couple of different levels. Like at first, you're being in a cool place, and like second, you're in a cool place, like led very personally and intimately by the people who've lived there for thousands of years. But also, like that was kind of special to me because I haven't been to my ancestral lands, and so like to be able to be on somebody else's and kind of like wonder what that might be like in my own home. I've described it as like making a love story to the experience and to the land and what I got to see.
Can you tell me a little more about that love story? What were the parts of it that made it feel like that?
Well, I'd never, I mean, like technically I've been on a boat before, but not like this, not like on the outside, being like out by the water, so close to everything, seeing all the different kind of islands and trees. And I mean, everybody was out on the water eventually. Like we had the captain inside driving the boats, but everybody else was just getting all the wind in their face and getting water sprayed on them, and getting like the stories told as we passed each location. The elders that we had with us in the boat were like pointing at the islands, describing like what they used those islands for, etc., and kind of like the lore that came with them. They were pointing out like places that they hunted, animals that used to live there, and like I don't know if it's like appropriate for me to say other things. They sounded like a bit ceremonial, so I'll leave those ones out. But like there was all kinds of different uses for the different like island clusters, because that's how that land is formed, which I just thought was really, really cool. Like I come from like people in the prairies and like the really flat lands that are kind of like a bit landlocked, I guess. So that is like wild to me.
Can you tell me a little bit about your art style and how you brought it to the project?
Oh boy, okay. Well, geez, I don't honestly know what to say much about my art style. I've been deeply influenced by comics my entire life, I would say. So that's just comics broadly and in general have a lot to influence on my art style. I like the like really the capturing of movement in frames and stuff, and like the really like kinetic energy, the like the line work, the shading, things like that. So I tried to keep kind of a more like traditional art style like comic-wise approach to my comic, at least. Mostly because I feel like it's like I haven't been kind of taught by like any other like indigenous people or elders or anything how to draw in like quote unquote indigenous art styles. And so I don't want to be trying to, I don't know, approximate anything that I don't have any proper knowledge in. So I feel it's more appropriate for me to like tell indigenous stories from an indigenous perspective, even if I can't do it in a traditional indigenous art style, right? Because no matter what I make, it's still native art.
And I understand a big part of this project was getting it together, compiling it with the intention of taking the finished copy, going to the Homalco Nation and giving it to the nation and saying, this is yours now, do with it whatever you want. Can you tell me what that process was like for you, like when that happened?
I mean, being able to go back to Campbell River and like, so like it was kind of just a cute kind of what word am I looking for? Like a reprise, I suppose, of when we went out there to see the land for the first time. And then about a year later, we're all going there almost a year to the day, like in the same car with the same people, listening to the same soundtrack and going to the same hotel. And we get in there to this like big but still like pretty intimate room, especially after like all like the nation members and like friends and family and whatnot filtered in. And when we got to kind of put on that display with the cute little PowerPoints and everything and all like the snack table in behind, it was really nice to see, you know, the nation members firsthand and the joy on their face to see such a project come to life about their history and their people and their language. And I understand why that's exciting, because like I'd been curious about my heritage for a really long time. And like I remember trying to like do any kind of research to find out more about Horse Lake, the people there, and anything, and not being able to find anything at all. So anything that preserves cultural relevance is a really big gift, in my opinion.
Valin Onstein is one of the artists who worked on the graphic novel Homalhkwu Hero Stories, which tells a trio of stories inspired by elders from Homalco First Nation. A launch event took place Thursday at VIU. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Fruit is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
This program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.